This article is from the Oakland Tribune in the magazine and fiction section. Of course, they'll put it in the fiction section. There's just evidence everywhere. Sunday, November 27th, 1932, when Mu ruled the world. This is probably one of my favorite subjects. Tablets found in Asia and evidences of prehistoric civilization discovered on American continent tend to show these countries to have been colonies of a motherland in the Pacific Ocean. Mu, the lost continent. Where was it? Where is it? Most people have heard of Atlantis, the continent in the Atlantic Ocean, but what of Mu, the continent in the Pacific? Many persons probably never have heard of Mu, yet America was one of her first colonies. Thousands of records and scores of states and nations scattered in the four corners of the earth bear silent witness of Mu, according to Colonel James Churward, 82-year-old Mount Vernon, New York student, who for 62 years has traveled, studied, and researched hitherto undeciphered records which tell of Mu. Mu, for instance, holds the key to the identity of the cliff dwellers of Arizona, New Mexico, and the other 5 states in the southwestern United States. Where their relics are found, Mu's records tell of the 3 civilizations which preceded the cliff dwellers. They tell of the origin of the American Indians. Totem poles in Alaska tell of Mu and what became of it. Egypt, India, China, Japan, Burma, Central and South America, Africa, all of them, her colonies in the South Sea Islands, her protruding fingers, all that remains of that vast continent, all tell for those who can read the mute evidence of her greatness. Yet, up to 1926, after 56 years of real labor and study, Colonel Churward, a veritable globetrotter, who now lives at Mount Vernon near New York City, published nothing concerning the lost continent of Pacific Mu. To be absolutely sure he was right, he told me, for he admits the facts he gives as facts are contrary to the theories of archaeologists and geologists, and he knew he would have to prove every statement he made. But these records tell the same story, he says, be they in Burma, Tibet, in the Uyghur capital city, in North or South America, or in Africa, or in the South Sea Islands, in caves or on rocks, on temples and tablets, thousands of them, all point to and prove that man originated on Mu, that the rest of the world was settled from that lost continent. The records are really easy to read and simple to decipher when one learns. I have made keys of them so that others may read them when I am gone. Thus what I have learned will not be lost. In 1870, he began his studies as the pupil of a 75-year-old Rishi priest of the Naskau order in India. The priest became interested in the 20-year-old youth who tried to read the carvings on Indian ruins. The 2 men had met and become acquainted while working together in famine-stricken India. At that time, the Rishi knew his order came from the motherland, but he and the 2 other priests, each close to 100 years old, knew nothing authentic about Mu. These tablets, said the colonel, gave me the first hint of Mu and sent me on a worldwide search. They told of the land in the Pacific, the motherland of man. These 2 and the others, 150 in all, told of things that Rishi and I had never dreamed of. The word Mu itself means motherland, mother, field, and country, mouth, empire. They told of a vast flat country which colonized the rest of the world before the mountains were raised, when there were no Andes, Rockies, High Sierras, nor Alps, no Himalayas. On the Troana manuscript in the British Museum, which I was permitted to read, said the colonel, I found further facts. It refers to Mu, too, and I found that Mu had 64 million inhabitants, whites the ruling race, red, brown, and yellow peoples. These people, according to various records I have found, were highly civilized. In fact, they were civilized then as we will be, say, about 100,000 years from now. They knew science, astronomy, about the origin of man, cosmic forces, and mathematical facts we have not touched. Because we of North America are most interested in what Mu meant to us, I asked the colonel if there were any records linking the United States and North America with the lost continent of Mu. He waxed eloquent on the subject of North America, saying, "In their excitement over the discovery of a few human bones such as the Neanderthal man, the Piltdown man, and the Heidelberg man, scientists in Europe and North America have completely ignored and cast aside the remains of the American man. He holds that the different civilizations are proved by their various writings, the remains of their homes, the strata in which they are found, and the things which are found with the human bones. In private, for instance, Colonel Churward shows the drawings of paintings in the Grapevine Canyon which say, 'This temple is erected to the memory of Mu, the motherland of man, which has been submerged with myriads of souls. The sun shines no more upon her. She is dead.' At Gold Gulch, Nevada, he tells of another monument which says, 'A mouth opened, the volcanic vapors came forth, the land gave way, and Mu, the great ruler, the empire of the sun, sank into that abyss of fire.' Concerning Arizona, Colonel Churward says that Dr. Walter Houghton of the Smithsonian Institute, in making examinations of the petrified forest of that state, found remains of 4 distinct civilizations, and that 3 of them exist before the mountains were raised, just as he himself, the colonel, had found 3 civilizations in some of the cliff dwellers' states, one built on top of another. He holds too that man lived contemporaneously with the mastodon in Arizona, as proved by paintings in the Havasupai Canyon made at least 12,000 years ago. This shows a mastodon and a man together. From Nevada comes another proof that these prehistoric men knew the mastodon and his co-inhabitant, the saber-toothed tiger. Colonel Churward further asserts that according to the Zuni myth of the famous Hopi Indians, these people knew the great reptilian monsters of the Carboniferous Age, which frequented the earth to the Cretaceous period. Colonel Churward is particularly interested in the Pueblo Indians of New Mexico, a highly civilized race in the olden days, whose connection with Mu, he says, is perfectly established. Both their religious and art records and their traditions, too, prove their connections with the lost continent. He rebutes all theories about the crossings on the Bering Land Bridge and insists those prehistoric men came in ships because all the known records on the subject say they did. Of the cliff dwellers, he has made special study. Of the cliff dwellers, he has made special study. They colonized in Wyoming, Utah, Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, and Nevada. These cliff dwellers have been one of the mysteries of our age, with their water pipes, their many-storied houses, and their evident high civilization. He says the records say over and over again that they came from Mu. He suggests their great ships came either through the Gulf of California and up the Colorado, or they may have come to the coast of California near a point where San Diego now is, and came across by land. When the first settlements of the 3 earliest civilizations were made in our southwestern states, he says, it was probably before the mountains were raised, but when the cliff dwellers entered America, the mountains had probably already been raised, for we find their homes on the cliffs. The records, he says, prove they spoke the Yucatan Maya language. On a totem pole from Alaska was found a record of the tribe's history. It told that the ancestors of that tribe had come to the country in great ships from Mu, and it even told of destruction of Mu. Much has been discovered in Mexico within recent years to bear out claims that the part of the world also knew of Mu. Now for a little more about Mu, her age and location. According to Colonel Churward, Mu's center was a little south of the equator. It was about 6,000 miles from east to west and 3,000 from north to south. From early manuscripts and records, he estimates that Mu was in existence about 200,000 years before it went down. Dates are determined by positions of various constellations shown on the records. Consultation with present-day astronomers gives the colonel the date of when constellations would have been in those positions. As to her shape and size, one naturally asks, how would anyone know? The remains in the Pacific and a map found in Tibet give him his information. When Colonel Churward was in Tibet more than 50 years ago, he saw some maps cut in clay tablets in an old monastery. One looked like South America. A few years ago, when working on certain ancient questions, he remembered that map and thought perhaps he could get some facts if he had a tracing of the map. He remembered the canal he had seen 13,000 feet up in the Andes Mountains, with fossil formation, which he felt sure had once been at sea level and had been used by Mu's colonists in traveling from Mu from the Pacific into an inland sea and thence into the Atlantic Ocean. Through help of the British government, he received the tracings, which proved just as he had thought it would, that those canals had existed. The map also showed the location of cities, some of which have since been located by their ruins. The map also showed the location of cities, some of which have since been located by their ruins. One was Tiwanaku, at the mouth of the canal, just as the colonel expected it would be as a result of the ruins he had seen. That city is now 13,000 feet above sea level, which he says again proves that Mu colonized before the mountains were raised. The map is dated with constellations. Astrologists tell him that it is 25,000 years since they were in that position. With the tracing of the map of South America came word that the men in Tibet were not sure just which maps Colonel Churward referred to, so they sent 4 tracings. One was of Mu, which gave the shape, one was of Atlantis, and another was of North America. This the colonel has not yet used. It shows an inland sea in the Mississippi Valley and an arm of the Atlantic in the St. Lawrence Valley and no Florida. The ruling race on Mu was white. Their descendants are still one of the mysteries of the South Sea Islands, the beautiful Polynesians whom explorers say are the most beautiful women on the earth. From various records, the colonel has got the story of Mu's destruction. His theory is that the whole continent was undermined with great gas chambers, and that when the gas belts were being forced, they tapped and blew out these chambers. As the gas in these chambers was upholding Mu, when they collapsed, Mu went down. The flat country collapsed with great cataclysmic waves, fire, and seething waters. Just the tops of volcanoes formed later, and fragments of the mainland remain. Looking down into the Pacific waters in some places, one can even today see some of the ruins of Mu's great buildings. On tops of some of the South Sea Islands are still found quarried and carved stones ready to be shipped to distant points for buildings. Some of these carved rocks weigh as much as 70 tons, 14,000 pounds. How they were moved, what sort of ships were used, how they were set up, how were they carried, no one knows. Colonel Churward says, when Mu went down, millions perished. More starved to death as they were left on protruding islands with no food. Some went mad. Some resorted to cannibalism to survive. Before the destruction of Mu, there was no savagery. After destruction, the custom of burnt offerings began in memory to Mu. Myths, legends, designs on tapa clothing, customs in far separated nations all make me believe that the Garden of Eden was not in Asia, but on the lost continent of Mu, from which the rest of the world was first colonized.